Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Severe flooding in Portland. OCA head calls for society to take stance in the wake of increased violence against children. And later in sports, reggae girls to wrap up preparation for Olympic qualifier today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shamela Pullen. Here are the details. We begin with news this afternoon of widespread flooding in sections of Portland. The parish has been experiencing heavy rain from yesterday into today. Motorists in Port Antonio are being urged to exercise extreme caution during this time. Meanwhile, one resident pointed to an area that is now posing a danger to him.
Actually, the rain a fall and landslide come down from the place, so I wake up and see it and stuff like. I move out to mattress them because I don't want them wet. And run out of the house because I don't know. When the rain did fall and the dirt a come, it sound like a somebody directly a tear it down. All me I hear, boom, boom, it a shake up. So I say, well, I not stay in here and make the dirt come and show it down with me. I come out, phone, money, just myself me take out.
And we'll have more on this story in primetime news at 7. Alarming, that's how children's advocate Dan Gordon Harrison describes the circumstances under which 8-year-old Talia Thomas was murdered. Mrs. Gordon Harrison is also making another appeal to parents and caregivers to be more vigilant with their children. It's been 2 days since 8-year-old Talia Thomas was raped and killed by her 27-year-old male neighbor in St. Anne. Children's advocate Dan Gordon Harrison, in condemning the gruesome act, says there aren't enough words to describe the horrific incident.
Certainly, it's very alarming to hear this again. This is the third 8-year-old, if we're going to be age specific, in the last couple of months that really has come to the fore in very, very tragic and violent circumstances as the victim of murder following some gross violation. So to say that I am disheartened is an understatement. To say that I am again disappointed in the civility or the lack of civility within the Jamaican society would be an understatement. It's alarming, it's sobering, and it's incredibly sad.
Which is why Mrs. Gordon Harrison is appealing to parents and caregivers not to take anything for granted. She says the Jamaican society continues to be marked by violence by deviant persons, and oftentimes girls are the victims. The children's advocate says the persons committing these acts are usually familiar with the victims.
If you look at perhaps the last 3 cases involving 8-year-old girls is one that highlights that predominantly the statistics confirm that it's people who know children and who have access to them and who they know in turn that are the lead persons to violate them. When we think about the neighbor, when we think about a relative, when we think about somebody who is familiar by way of sight, children are so vulnerable and naturally trusting that if they see someone in their space, they're going to assume that that's a good person.
She wants society at all levels to take a firm stance that enough is enough.
Not to say that boys are not victims of violence as well, but we're seeing overwhelmingly that the statistics are showing that girls bear the brunt of sexual assault and violence. And so we need to have a situation where we say enough is enough. What do we do collectively? It means that if we have information, for example, that there could be a situation that's not as positive, we need to turn that information over to the relevant authorities so they can check it. It means if we have actually witnessed something, we need to say something because only evidence, which is in court, can lead to a conviction.
Over at the Discover Bay Primary and Infant School, it was a morning of extreme sadness following the brutal murder of Talia Thomas. Talia, who was a grade 4 student at the school, was raped and killed on Saturday afternoon. On Monday, parents, students, and members of staff at the school joined together for a tearing-jerking devotional service. Chairman of the school board, Raymond Treasure, said the incident has not only affected the school community, but the entire Discovery Bay.
This morning it is very, very gloomy over the Discovery Bay Primary. But as I said to the students and staff this morning, we just have to press on. You know, we can't afford to give up now. Clearly there is almost a war on our children here in Jamaica. But some of us as adults will just have to step up to the plate and surround them, find every way possible to protect them from what is happening. But we will be standing by the teachers here and the family members who are also present.
However, Mr. Treasure says it will take some time for the school to heal from Talia's passing.
And so we will be reaching out to all the responsible agencies to help us to get back on our foot, because we really cannot allow these children to think that they cannot trust anybody, they cannot achieve their goals, because once they step out, once they shine, some predator is out there waiting to take away their life.
Member of Parliament for North East St. Andrew, Delroy Chuck, is appealing for calm in the Grand Spen community. The area has seen several shootings and killings in the last few days. More in this report.
Tension is high in Grand Spen, St. Andrew after 3 murders over the weekend. One man was killed on Saturday, and a double murder rocked the community Sunday following a drive-by shooting. And with expected reprisals from the ongoing gang war, there is heightened fear among residents that the crime situation has escalated. Police have also urged motorists and passers-by traversing through the space to be cautious. Amidst all of this, Member of Parliament for North East St. Andrew, Delroy Chuck, today said police presence has increased in the constituency.
They are gathering information, doing their investigation, and their presence will certainly calm the area. And I hope that the perpetrators or those who are encouraging it will, cease and desist.
In addition, they are concerned that the community could descend into a situation residents know all too well, where frequent shootings painted the roads red, forcing people to stay indoors. Over the last few decades, residents have endured vicious gun wars, and the tension present today is not comforting. But Mr. Chuck says he's sure the police will get more intelligence in the space that will prevent a flare-up of crime. But more importantly, it will
stop various innuendos and speculation as to how this emerged. This is a criminal matter. Let us leave it to the police to gather the information, do the investigation, and charge whoever should be charged.
And to his constituents, Mr. Chuck reinforced that this sort of violence will not become commonplace.
I think my constituents know that this is a matter which is unusual. The place has been extremely calm. We ask them if they have information to give it to the police. There's no doubt that some of the perpetrators may be from outside of the area. So we really hope that they can give information to the police.
Jamila Maitland, TVJ.
The sentencing hearing for the leader of the One Done gang trial and Andre Blackman Bryan and the other 14 convicts took a twist this morning when he opted to represent himself. When the matter was called up in the Home Circuit Court, Mr. Bryan attorney Lloyd McFarlane told the court that the leader intends to address the court. Having listened to Mr. Bryan's request, Chief Justice Brian Sykes, who has been presiding over the trial which spanned over 2 years, advised Mr. Bryan to allow his attorney to address the court. But Mr. Bryan insisted and was allowed to speak. Addressing his social inquiry report, Mr. Bryan said he did not acknowledge the man who is said to be his father. During his address, Bryan cited excerpts from Plazim Isaiah as he rambled. In the meantime, Brian told the court that the former gangsters who testified against him lied blatantly. It's time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. Schools are now on high alert as the country is experiencing a dengue outbreak. Additional measures are now being contemplated, as we hear in this report from Karen Simpson.
On Saturday, the Ministry of Health declared a dengue outbreak in Jamaica. Data from the ministry revealed that children are especially affected by the virus. Linvern Wright is president of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools, JAPS.
I think we need to educate our students and parents, especially when we meet our parents, to help them to understand much better how to deal with mosquito control. I think many persons, a huge part of this is about personal responsibility and community responsibility. And I think as much as schools can assist in that regard, we ought to ensure that we do that, because it is a serious matter. They say the mosquito is the most dangerous animal. If it is that we don't control them, then they can be dangerous to us.
Mr. Wright says he has not received any report of dengue cases from schools, but he will be meeting with administrators.
In fact, I have a PTA session this evening with my executive. It's something that we are going to have on our agenda. And I'm sure other principals are doing much of the same thing. Through your guidance department, through HFLE teachers, through your science department, those are things that we can ensure that we ramp up or actually make current as matters to deal with our students. I really hope that the authorities had been doing their work in terms of mosquito control. And because it's a strange thing to me that we have not had much rain over the year, but then at the time when rain begins, we have an outbreak almost immediately. Maybe we should have been able to do better to control this kind of thing happening.
In the meantime, President of the Medical Association of Jamaica, Dr. Leslie Mead, is calling for the Ministry of Health to immediately roll out a public education campaign surrounding dengue. There are concerns that hospitals could be burdened with cases. The Ministry of Health says effective today, the National Emergency Operations Center, as well as the emergency operations centers in all parishes, have been activated following Saturday's declaration of a dengue outbreak. Kerry-Ann Simpson, TVJ News.
It's now time for the Business Minute.
The Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, JMEA, says it has established a Skills Advisory Council. The body is to help the agency develop a better understanding of the talent needed for its member organizations and the kind of support they need. Further afield, Evergrande's plan to restructure its massive debt is in trouble because of a regulatory probe into its main subsidiary. The company said in a statement that it is unable to meet the qualifications for issuing new notes which refer to short or medium-term securities because Hengda Real Estate Group was being investigated. Last month, Hengda, Evergrande's flagship unit in mainland China, said it was being probed by the securities regulator because of suspected violations of requirements to disclose information to investors. If the restructuring fails and Evergrande is unable to reach a new deal with its creditors, it could face liquidation where its assets are sold and it stops all operations. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Kelisha Williams.
Thank you, Kelisha. Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, the authorities in Chile have raised the alert level for the Villarrica volcano to orange, the second highest after they registered a gradual increase in its activity. Villarrica is one of the most active volcanoes in South America. The 9,340 feet volcano last erupted in 2015. Dozens of families who live in a radius of 5 miles from the crater will be evacuated. Authorities say effective Monday, schools will be closed for 5 days. On the international scene, the Writers Guild of America and major Hollywood studios have reached a tentative deal to end the months-long strike. The WGA announced the tentative agreement in an email to its more than 11,000 members, calling the deal exceptional. The writers have been on strike since early May, the second longest in the union's history. And Italian mafia boss Matteo Messina Denaro, who was one of the country's most wanted men until his capture earlier this year, has died. The 61-year-old was thought to be a boss of the notorious Cosa Nostra Mafia and spent 30 years on the run before he was detained in January. He was being treated for cancer at the time of his arrest and was moved from prison to hospital last month. Denaro was thought to have been responsible for numerous murders. And those are the top regional and international stories. I'm Carrie Simpson.
We head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your midday sports report with Jordan Fort.